Supra. Then Sudana, remembering that spiritual benefactor's teaching of the universal I, reflecting on that projection of Buddhahood, keeping in mind those multitudes of statements of the teaching, entering into those oceans of entries into the teaching, pondering that method of teaching, plunging into the principles of that whirlpool of teaching, entering fully into the space of that teaching, clarifying that sphere of teaching, and contemplating that treasure island of teaching, gradually made his way to Sagaratira in Lanka, where he looked in all directions desiring to see the monk Supratishthita. He saw Supratishthita walking in the sky, surrounded by countless hundreds of thousands of celestial beings. He also saw the sky covered with clouds of celestial flowers, with the sound of countless clouds of heavenly music and countless streamers and banners offered by the chief celestials to the monk Supratishthita as tokens of respect. He also saw inconceivable clouds of black aloe-scented water thundering in the sky, raised on high by the chief water spirits. He also heard countless sounds of pleasing celestial music and song coming from the sky with words of reverence and hymns of praise performed by supernatural beings. He also saw inconceivable clouds of fine cloths spread out in the sky by joyous serpent chiefs out of respect for Supratishthita. He also saw inconceivable clouds of jewels set in the sky by the chief titans, with the light of the magnificent array of their inconceivable qualities. He also saw inconceivable hosts of bird girls, standing in the sky with their hands joined in gestures of respect, with non-injury uppermost in their minds. He also saw inconceivable hundreds of thousands of goblin chiefs in the sky with their retinues, their bodies transfigured, directed there by goodwill toward the monk Supratishthita. He also saw inconceivable numbers of demigod chiefs with their retinues circling in the sky to protect Supratishthita. He also saw inconceivable hundreds of thousands of Brahma chiefs in the sky making salutations, uttering pleasant words of respect and songs of praise. He also saw inconceivable hundreds of thousands of celestial beings of the pure abodes in their palaces in the sky, paying their respects to the monk Supratishthita. Then Sudana, seeing the monk Supratishthita walking in the sky, was pleased, enraptured, transported, overjoyed, happy. He saluted and greeted Supratishthita and said to him, "Noble one, I have set my mind on supreme enlightenment, but I do not know how an enlightening being is to seek the qualities of Buddhahood, how an enlightening being is to acquire the qualities of Buddhas, how an enlightening being is to accumulate the qualities of Buddhas, how an enlightening being is to cultivate the qualities of Buddhas, how an enlightening being is to actualize the qualities of Buddhas, how an enlightening being is to act in accord with the qualities of Buddhas, how an enlightening being is to assemble the qualities of Buddhas, how an enlightening being is to contemplate the qualities of Buddhas, how an enlightening being is to clarify the qualities of Buddhas in order to accomplish all the tasks of enlightening beings, how an enlightening being is to approach and follow the qualities of Buddhas. Noble one, I hear that you give instructions to enlightening beings. Please tell me how an enlightening being is to set to work on the Buddha teachings, not to lose sight of Buddha whatever one is doing, not to lose sight of enlightening beings so as to always be in contact with reality, always to be involved with the Buddha teachings so as to be at one with the roots of goodness of all enlightening beings, always to be involved with the vows of enlightening beings so as to accord with knowledge, always to be involved in the practices of enlightening beings so as to accomplish the task of all enlightening beings, always to be pervading all Buddha fields so as to live continuously through all ages, to remain in the conditional for the manifestation of the projections of all Buddhas, always to be hearing the teaching in order to visit in one's own body the places of death and birth of all Buddhas, by the emanation-like action of enlightening beings, and to always be in contact with the light of knowledge so as to receive the teachings of all Buddhas and accord with knowledge of past, present, and future. To this Supratishthita replied, "It is good that you have set your mind on supreme perfect enlightenment, and ask about the qualities of Buddhahood, the qualities of omniscience, the qualities of independence. I have attained the enlightening liberation unobstructed door. Going in and out of this unobstructed door liberation, practicing it, analyzing it, examining it, investigating it, and clarifying it, I have attained a light of knowledge called ultimate non-obstruction, whereby I am free from obstruction in awareness of the mental actions of all sentient beings, knowing where all sentient beings die and are born, entries into the channels to memory of past states, associations with all beings in future ages, communications to all sentient beings of the present time, knowledge of the conventions of languages of all sentient beings, cutting off the doubts of all sentient beings, comprehending the differences in the faculties of all sentient beings, approaching all sentient beings at appropriate times to guide them to full development, comprehension of time divisions as being conceptual, and in non-corporeal pervasion of the Buddha fields in the 10 directions, all by the attainment of non-being, non-abiding, and non-doing. By the realization of this mystic power of non-doing, I walk, stand, sit, and lie down in the sky, disappear and appear, produce smoke and flame. Being one, I become many. Being many, I become one. I become now visible, now invisible. I go through walls unhindered as through empty space. While sitting cross-legged, I travel in space, like a bird on the wing. I go in and out of the earth as if in water. I walk on water unhindered as on the earth. I smoke and flame like a great conflagration. I cause even the earth to quake. With my hand I polish even the sun and moon, those bodies of great potency, power, and light. I envelop even up to the Brahma world in my body, covering the world with clouds of lights the colors of all jewels. I emit clouds in the forms of all beings, emanating clouds of webs of light of infinite colors. I go forth in all directions. In each moment of thought, I pass one world to the east. I pass 2 worlds, 3 worlds, 100 worlds, 1,000 worlds, 100,000 worlds, 1,000,000 worlds, 100 million worlds, 1 billion worlds, 100 billion worlds, 1 quintillion worlds, countless, measureless, endless, incomparable, inconceivable, incalculable, untold, unspeakably unspeakable numbers of worlds. And in those worlds are Buddhas living, in each of those oceans of worlds, in each of those streams of worlds, in each region of those worlds, in each age of those worlds, in each set of those worlds, in each occurrence of those worlds, in each expression of those worlds, in each medium of those worlds, in each particular of those worlds, in each sacred place in those worlds, in each site of enlightenment in those worlds, in each assembly in those worlds. I go to each of the Buddhas teaching in those worlds with as many bodies as atoms in endless Buddha lands, each body raining as many clouds of offerings as atoms in endless Buddha lands. Going to the Buddhas, I ceaselessly make offerings of all kinds of flowers, fragrances, garlands, unguents, robes, banners, pennants, canopies, nets, and ornaments. Those Buddhas explain, reveal, and elucidate, and I acknowledge and take up all that they teach. I also remember the purity of the Buddha lands of those Buddhas. As in the East, so also in all directions do I go to innumerable worlds, see the Buddhas teaching there, make offerings to them, acknowledge and take up what they say, and remember the purity of their Buddha lands. Also, All the beings who see me, to whom I come, are assured of supreme perfect enlightenment. Also, whatever beings I see, small or large, undeveloped or well-developed, happy or unhappy, I adopt a corresponding physical form in order to guide them to maturity and perfection in the appropriate time. And all beings who come to me I establish in this enlightening liberation, which is everywhere at once and which is the consummation of unerring power. Son, I know this enlightening liberation unobstructed door, which is everywhere at once engaged in the service of the Buddhas, appropriate to the development of all beings. How can I know the practice or tell the virtues of the great enlightening beings who act on great compassion, who act in accord with the practice of the great vehicle, whose conduct never deviates from the path of enlightening beings, whose conduct is free from attachment, whose conduct always embodies the will of enlightening beings, who always act with the thought of enlightenment, whose action is focused on the way of the enlightened, who always act with the thought of omniscience, whose way of action is like the sky, whose conduct is independent of all mundane realms, whose conduct is flawless, whose conduct is uncorrupted, whose conduct is consistent, whose conduct is faultless, whose conduct is pure, whose conduct is unblemished, whose conduct is free from evil, whose conduct is honest, whose conduct is dispassionate, whose conduct is undefiled. Go south, son, to the Dravidian city Vajrapura. There lives a grammarian named Megha. Go to him and ask him how an enlightening being is to learn and practice the conduct of enlightening beings. Then Sudana again paid his respects to the monk Supra and left. Megha. Then Sudana, mindful of the light of the teaching, steeped in intensity of faith in the teaching, his attention focused on thoughts of Buddha, intent on perpetuating the lineage of the three treasures, remembering spiritual friends, his mind having illumined the worlds of past, present, and future, thinking of great vows, striving for the salvation of all beings, his mind unattached to enjoyment of any created things, praising the tradition of dispassion, intent upon contemplation of the intrinsic essence of all things, firm in the commitment to purify all worlds, sojourning without attachment in the congregations of all Buddhas, gradually approached the Dravidian city Vajrapura, looking for the grammarian Megha. He saw Megha at a crossroads in the middle of the city, sitting on a lion seat to talk about the teaching, elucidating a scripture called Manifestation of Turning of the Wheel of Letters. Sudana went up to him, paid his respects, and said, "Noble one, I have set my mind on supreme perfect enlightenment, but I do not know how an enlightening being is to learn and carry out the practice of enlightening beings. How is an enlightening being to preserve the determination for enlightenment? How does one develop a will that is firm in all states of existence and is indefatigable? How does one purify one's intent in accord with invincibility? How is the power of great compassion produced so that it never flags? How does one acquire mental command that is totally purified? How is the light of wisdom produced, light free from obscurity in regard to meaning, principle, expression, and presence of mind? How does one acquire the power of recollection, keeping in mind the teachings of all Buddhas without confusion? How is the power of migration purified, illumining all states of existence with the truth? How is an enlightening being's power of concentration perfected, intent on the ascertainment and discernment of the meanings of all principles? Now Megha, out of respect for an enlightening being, got off his seat and prostrated himself before Sudana, then showered Sudana with golden flowers, precious jewels, and the finest sandalwood powders, covered him with hundreds of thousands of robes dyed in various colors, showered him with beautiful flowers of many various colors with pleasant scents, and honored him with various other offerings, then said to him, "It is good that you have set your mind on supreme perfect enlightenment. One who arouses the determination for supreme perfect enlightenment becomes engaged in the perpetuation of the lineage of Buddhas, intent on correctly communicating the tradition of dispassion, engaged in purifying the family of all lands, directed toward guiding the family of all sentient beings to perfection, engaged in properly accomplishing all the teachings and transcending all things, intent on harmony of all actions, engaged in the fulfillment of all practices of enlightening beings, directed toward preserving the continuity of all religious vows, engaged in following knowledge of all times, active in making devotion steadfast, the focus of attention of all Buddhas, near to equality with all Buddhas, appreciated by all enlightening beings, praised by all sages, honored by all the chief Brahmas, protected by all the chief gods, respected, welcomed, and praised by the chiefs of the various supernatural beings sought out by all world rulers. One becomes very well suited for putting an end to the three kinds of bad conditions in all worlds, getting rid of all difficult conditions inopportune for attaining enlightenment, getting beyond all states of destitution, attaining birth in celestial or human states, always seeing spiritual benefactors, consistently listening to the lofty Buddha teaching, purifying the will for enlightenment, cultivating the cause of the thought of enlightenment, gaining the illumination of the path of enlightening beings, following the knowledge of enlightening beings, and dwelling in the stages of enlightening beings. This is what I think of such a one. Enlightening beings do what is difficult to do. It is hard to get to actually see them. They are comforts to the world. Enlightening beings are the mothers and fathers of all sentient beings. Enlightening beings are an adornment to the world with its gods. Enlightening beings are a refuge for those oppressed by suffering. Enlightening beings are a place of rest for the protection of all sentient beings. Enlightening beings are the breath of life to those suffering all kinds of terrors and calamities. Enlightening beings are a wind protecting all sentient beings from the heat of the three evils. Enlightening beings are earth, causing the roots of goodness of all sentient beings to grow. Enlightening beings are an ocean, a repository of endless treasures of virtue. Enlightening beings are a sun, producing the light of knowledge. Enlightening beings are the polar mountain, by virtue of the height of their roots of goodness. Enlightening beings are a moon, the moon of knowledge of the essence of enlightenment having risen in them. Enlightening beings are warriors crushing the armies of all demons. Enlightening beings are heroic, having reached the city of the state of independence. Enlightening beings are fire, annihilating the self-love of all sentient beings. Enlightening beings are clouds, causing vast clouds of true teaching to shower. Enlightening beings are rain, causing the sprouts of faculties such as faith to grow. Enlightening beings are navigators, showing the way on the ocean of truth. Enlightening beings are bridges conveying all sentient beings across the sea of mundane life. Enlightening beings are a pathway to the holy for all sentient beings. Thus praising enlightening beings to Sudana in such terms, Megha applauded Sudana. While he was saying these words pleasing to enlightening beings, there issued from his mouth a mass of flames that made 1,000 worlds clearly visible, and all the sentient beings who perceived that light came to Megha, illumined by the light. To them, their attention commanded by Megha, their hands held forth in respectful supplication, their bodies and minds cooled, enraptured, inspired with reverence, divested of conceit, freed from deception, senses tranquil, Megha expounded and conveyed the teaching of the manifestation of the turning of the wheel of letters, upon hearing which they became irreversible in their progress towards supreme perfect enlightenment. Megha sat back down on the seat of teaching and said to Sudana, I have attained the light of the spell of eloquence. I know the speech of all kinds of beings in a billion-world universe. I know the variety of speech of each kind of being. I know the unity of speech of each kind of being. I know the mixture of speech of each kind of being. I know the terms, speech, and concepts of all creatures. I know the ideas of all sages. I know the ideas of all ignoble people. I know the speech of enlightening beings, expressed according to the mentalities and languages of sentient beings. I enter into and focus on the oceans of utterances addressed to all sentient beings by the Buddhas of past, present, and future. As in this billion-world universe in each moment of thought, I enter into the oceans of all terms, expressions, speech, and concepts of sentient beings. I do the same in untold worlds in each of the 10 directions. I know this light of the spell of eloquence of enlightening beings, but how can I know the practice or tell the virtues of the enlightening beings who have entered the ocean of what is in various conceptions, who have entered the ocean of the various conceptions and languages of all people, who have entered the ocean of the various conventions of verbal designation used by all people, who have entered the ocean of logical connections of all statements, who have entered the ocean of literalism, who have entered the ocean of designation of all objects of past, present, and future in one object, who have entered the ocean of teaching which is beyond verbal expression, who have entered the ocean of the teaching of the Buddha, who have entered the ocean of explanations of distinct types of statements, who have entered the ocean of explanation guiding the analysis of statements of all truths, who have entered the ocean of speech of all beings, who have gone into the pure arrays of all spheres of sound, who are conversant with the ultimate distinctions of the wheel of phonemes. Go, son, there is a country south of here called Vanavasan, where there lives a distinguished man named Muktaka. Go ask him how an enlightening being is to undertake the practice of enlightening beings and become familiar with it, and how the mind is to be observed. Then Sudana, having bowed to Megha and paid respect to the teaching, describing the faith rooted in him, observing that all knowledge comes from following good spiritual benefactors, reluctantly took his leave and went on. Muktaka. Then Sudana, reflecting on that array of light of the spell of eloquence of enlightening beings, plunging into that enlightening being's ocean of principles of speech, remembering that enlightening being's mental purification, undertaking that enlightening being's production of inclination to goodness, clarifying that enlightening being's method of perfecting sentient beings, purifying that enlightening being's knowledge of how to take care of sentient beings, making firm that enlightening being's purity of willpower, establishing that enlightening being's power of supreme resolve, clarifying that body of interest of enlightening beings, producing that goodness of intent and thought of enlightening beings, evoking that effort of enlightening beings, equipped with a mind of firm commitment and tireless consistency, with unrelenting energy and determination, imbued with unshakable power of faith, with an indestructible mind, follower of the instructions of all spiritual benefactors, with the perspective of sane knowledge, on the verge of all-sided purity, coursing in the purity of unobstructed knowledge, imbued with the light of the principle of the universal I, illumined by the mystic formulations of all stages of enlightenment, his mind directed to the differentiations of the planes of the cosmos, aware of the pure essence of forms unfixed anywhere, intent on the sphere of absolute unity with no attachment, having purified the medium of powerful knowledge of all ideas, having broken through the boundaries of all spaces, progressively distinguishing the realms of worldly planes, progressively distinguishing the realms of planes of reality, intent on the manifestation of the vision of the varieties of abodes of Buddha, knowing about the distinctions of realms of time, his intellect bearing the radiant wheel of the teaching, his mind illumined by the light of the treasury of concentration of universally radiant knowledge, mentally and physically according with the stage of universal perspective, his mind illumined by the lightning of knowledge of those who realize thusness, realizing the exaltation of faith in omniscience, never without the exaltation of faith in the Buddha teaching, filled with the exaltation of the empowerment of Buddha, illumined by the inherent mental light of all Buddhas, hearing the vow to penetrate all networks of worlds with his own body, intent on putting all universes at once into his own body, made his way gradually to the country Vanavasan, arriving there after 12 years. He looked for the noble Muktaka, saw him, paid his respects, and said, "Noble one, I have made gains, having met the spiritual benefactor Megha. Why do I say this? Spiritual benefactors are hard to get to see, hard to get to encounter, hard to visit, hard to attend, hard to approach, hard to stay with, hard to be perfected by, hard to associate with. But I have met the spiritual benefactor Megha. Noble one, I have set my mind on supreme perfect enlightenment, to attend all Buddhas, to be on good terms with all Buddhas, to see all Buddhas, to know all Buddhas, to approach equality with all Buddhas, to follow the vows of all Buddhas, to fulfill the vows of all Buddhas, to view the knowledge attained by all Buddhas, to produce all Buddhas in my own body, to accomplish the realization of all Buddhas in my own practice, to directly know the mystical transformations of all Buddhas, to purify the powers and confidences of all Buddhas, to hear all true teachings tirelessly, to listen to and take up the teachings of all Buddhas, to hold the teachings of all Buddhas, to distinguish the teachings of all Buddhas, to preserve the instructions of all Buddhas, to be one being with all Buddhas, to be equal to all enlightening beings, to purify the practice of all enlightening beings, to fulfill the transcendent ways of enlightening beings, to purify the accomplishment of the vows of all enlightening beings, to attain all enlightening beings' store of mystical power of Buddhas, to be illumined by the endless knowledge of the treasury of truths of all enlightening beings, to approach the treasury of enlightening beings, to produce the infinite treasury of enlightening beings, to realize the ultimate consummation of guidance of sentient beings with the treasury of great compassion of all enlightening beings, to know the treasury of spiritual transformations of all enlightening beings, to command in my own body the treasury of powers of all enlightening beings, to be fully arrayed with the treasury of purities of all enlightening beings. Noble one, I have come in such a spirit, with such desires, such wishes, such intentions, such thoughts uppermost in my mind, aiming for such a realm, determined to follow such principles, intent on such purity, seeking such adornments, with such a humble mind, applied to such good, my faculties oriented in this way. Noble one, I hear you give instructions to enlightening beings, explain principle and clarify procedure, explain the path, take them across the bridge, open the door of the teaching, cut off doubts, dispel craving, pull out the arrow of confusion, clear away the grime of uncertainty, light up the obscurity in the mind, remove defilement from the mind, calm the mental flow, remove deviousness from the mind, cool the fever of the mind, foster non-attachment, turn back the mind revolving in the mundane whirl, turn enlightening beings away from evil, separate them from hells, free them from attachments, direct them toward omniscience, lead them into the city of truth, establish them in great compassion, settle them in great kindness, introduce them into the practice of enlightening beings, cause them to enter into the development of ways of concentration, establish them in means of realization, fill them with contemplation of inherent nature, and explain mind according to power for the sake of attainment of equanimity toward all beings. Noble One, please tell me how an enlightening being is to learn, commence, and carry out the practice of enlightening beings, and how one so engaged can quickly purify the sphere of practice of enlightening beings. At that juncture, Muktaka entered an enlightening concentration medium called Collection of All Buddha Fields, led by a mystic formula of endless progression, accomplishing entry into this concentration by the power of his past roots of goodness, by the empowerment of the Buddha, and by Manjushri's attention and gift of the light of knowledge. As soon as Muktaka had entered that state, his body became pure, and by that purity of body, as many Buddhas in the 10 directions as atoms in 10 Buddhalands were visible within his body, along with the adornments of their pure lands, their congregations, their pure lights, their past actions and abodes, their mystical projections, their vows, their pure arrays of liberative practices, their manifestations of attainment of perfect enlightenment, their turnings of the wheel of teaching, their developments of sentient beings, and the ultimate consummation of their teaching. All these were visible within Muktaka's body without mutual confusion, without mutual obstruction, clearly distinct, showing the various individual ages accurately defined, the various arrays of the Buddhalands, the various adornments of the congregations of enlightening beings, and the various miracles of the Buddhas. Some Buddhas were seen to be in the heaven of happiness, in a world setting forth various means of liberation and illumining various undertakings. Some were seen descending from the heaven of happiness, doing the duty of Buddhas. Some were seen in the womb of the mother displaying various miracles. Some were seen being born and showing a child's play. Some were seen at home, some leaving home, some gone to the summit of enlightenment defeating the army of demons. Some were seen surrounded by deities, spirits, and cherubim, being asked by Brahma and Indra to turn the wheel of the teaching. Some were seen turning the wheel of teaching. Some were seen in the abodes of all beings. Some were seen passing away. In some cases, the division of the relics of deceased Buddhas in a world was seen, and in some cases, people and celestial beings in a Buddhaland were seen adorning a Buddha's shrine. And what those Buddhas said, in various groups of beings, in various beings' worlds, in various realms of existence, in various assemblies of beings, in various situations according to beings' virtues, states, inclinations, beliefs, and faculties, in various periods of time, amid various kinds of beings' activities, in various manifestations of worlds of beings, carrying out various intentions, in the midst of beings with various degrees of purity of senses and various afflictions, habits, and propensities, teaching them by various manifestations of Buddha's transfigurations and projections, by various expressions, various utterances, various enunciations of doctrine, various mystical mnemonic formulae, various intellectual analyses of principles, various stirrings of the ocean of names of truth, various roarings of the mighty lion's roar of Buddhas, various manifestations of magical performances teaching beings bases of goodness, mystic projections showing various facets of memory, various lion roars foretelling the Buddhahood of enlightening beings, various manifestations of the wheel of teaching of the enlightened, in infinite assemblies of infinite varieties, all interdependent, in groups variously purified, in large groups contained in small groups, in groups a league deep, 10 leagues deep, up to groups the size of as many worlds as atoms in untold Buddha fields. All that those Buddhas taught, Sudna heard, took in, remembered, undertook, and contemplated. He also saw the mystic projection and the inconceivable power of concentration of the enlightening being. Then Muktaka, mindful, perfectly cognizant, arose from that concentration and said to Sudna, I go in and out of a liberation of Buddhas which is called unobstructed manifestation. As I go in and out of the unobstructed manifestation liberation of Buddhas, to the east I see in the world golden light, a Buddha named Supreme Savior, along with the whole group of enlightening beings there, led by the enlightening being Child of Radiance. To the south I see in the world possessed of all powers, a Buddha named Universal Spread of Fragrance, with the whole group of enlightening beings there, led by King of Thought. To the west I see, in the world possessed of all fragrances and beauties, a Buddha named Supreme Lamp, with the whole group of enlightening beings there, led by unobstructed mind. To the north I see in the world Vestment Banner, a Buddha named Diamond Crusher, with the whole group of enlightening beings there, led by boldly advancing on indestructible feet. To the northeast I see in the world Beauty of all Jewels, a Buddha named Radiance of the Independent Eye, with the whole group of enlightening beings there, led by independent emanation. To the southeast I see in the world Glow of Fragrant Flames, a Buddha named Fragrant Lamp, with the whole group of enlightening beings there, led by supreme intellect differentiating the planes of all realms of reality. To the southwest I see in a world sunny golden shining, a Buddha named Illuminating Voice of Universal Knowledge, with the whole group of enlightening beings there, led by Hanging Crest of Radiant Flowery Flames. To the northwest I see in the land Brilliant Shining Treasury with fragrant adornments, a Buddha named Light of a Measureless Ocean of Virtue, with the whole group of enlightening beings there, led by mind blazing with light in a body free from attachments. In the nadir I see in the world blaze of lights from jewel lions, a Buddha named Beam of Light illumining the cosmos, with the whole group of enlightening beings there, led by mind born of the light of the cosmos. In the zenith I see the world radiant with splendor of appearance, a Buddha named Light of Liberation of indestructible virtue and glory, with the whole group of enlightening beings there, led by mind of energy of unobstructed power. Beginning with these, I see as many Buddhas in the 10 directions as atoms in 10 Buddhalands, and yet those Buddhas do not come here, and I do not go there. Also, whenever I want to see the Buddha Infinite Light in the world blissful, I see the Buddha Diamond Light in the world like sandalwood. I see the Buddha Jewel Light in the world fragrant. I see the Buddha Jewel Lotus Light in the world lotus-like. I see the Buddha Silent Light in the world golden. I see the Buddha Imperturbable in the world joy. I see the Buddha Lion in the world standing well. I see the Buddha Moon-like Awareness in the world Mirror Globe Light. I see the Buddha Luminous in the world Pure Clarity of Jewel-like Splendor. In this way I see whatever Buddha I wish in whatever world in whichever direction. I see whatever Buddha I wish to see in whatever time, in whatever abode, involved in whatever past practice, whatever Buddha I wish to see in whatever miraculous performances, in whatever teaching activity, and yet the Buddhas do not come here, nor do I go there. Without discerning any coming from anywhere on the part of the Buddhas, without discerning any going on the part of my own body, knowing the Buddhas is like a dream, knowing my own mind as dreamlike thought, knowing the Buddhas is like a reflection, knowing my own mind as like a vessel of clear water, knowing the Buddhas as like magically produced forms, knowing my mind as like magic, knowing the nature of voices of the Buddhas as the reverberation of the sound of echoes in the mountains, knowing my own mind as like an echo, I realize, I am mindful, that all enlightenment principles of enlightening beings are based on one's own mind, that all their purification of Buddha lands, all enlightening practices, all development and guidance of sentient beings, all undertaking of the vows of enlightening beings, all attainment to the ocean of omniscience, roaming in the inconceivable liberation of enlightening beings, attainment of the enlightenment of Buddhas, spiritual communion with the cosmos, and knowledge of subtle communion with all ages, all are based on one's own mind. In this connection, I think that one's own mind should be supported by roots of goodness, moistened by the clouds of the teaching, purified by principles that should be focused on, made firm by vigor, made calm by forbearance, guided by following knowledge, clarified by wisdom, developed in spiritual powers, expanded to the equality with the Buddhas, illumined by the 10 powers of the enlightened. I know this Buddha liberation of unobstructed manifestation and go in and out of it. How can I know the practice or tell of the virtues of enlightening beings whose minds are unobstructed, whose sphere is a state free from all obstruction, who have attained concentration focused on the teachings of all Buddhas of the present, who have attained concentration leading into enlightenment that does not become ultimately extinct, who have realized the equality of past, present, and future, who know the science of the sphere of concentration on the continuity of all planes, who distribute their bodies throughout all Buddha lands, who abide in the unfragmented state of Buddhas, whose perspective faces in all directions, who observe the sphere of all-inclusive knowledge, who know the becoming and disintegration of all worlds in their own bodies, without any dualistic notions regarding their bodies or the worlds. Go south to Milasparana, on the tip of the continent. A monk named Saradvaja lives there. Go to him and ask how an enlightening being is to learn and undertake the practice of enlightening beings. Then Sudna, paying his respects to Muktaka, eulogizing, contemplating, desiring, and dwelling on Muktaka's countless virtues, with love for spiritual benefactors, taking refuge in spiritual benefactors, seeking to please spiritual benefactors, not contesting the knowledge of spiritual benefactors, seeing omniscience as realized by following spiritual benefactors, obedient to spiritual benefactors, to be spiritually healed by the techniques of spiritual benefactors, his thoughts following the direction of spiritual benefactors, thinking of spiritual benefactors as a mother because they get rid of all that is not beneficial, thinking of spiritual benefactors as a father because they produce all good qualities. Sudna left Muktaka. Saradvaja. Then Sudna, reflecting on the instruction of the eminent Muktaka, following Muktaka's direction, remembering the inconceivable liberation of enlightening beings, remembering the inconceivable light of knowledge of enlightening beings, following the inconceivable entrance into the realm of reality, entering into the inconceivable principle of the communion of enlightening beings, observing the inconceivable transformation of those who realize thusness, intent on the inconceivable communion of Buddha fields, clarifying the inconceivable manifestation of the magical power of Buddhas, contemplating the magnificence of the inconceivable order of the concentrations and liberations of enlightening beings, following the steadfast determination to perform the inconceivable work of enlightening beings, conforming to the stream of undertaking of the inconceivable deeds of enlightening beings, gradually proceeded to Milasparana on the tip of the continent, where he looked all over for the monk Saradvaja. He saw Saradvaja by the side of a place for walking at a retreat, sitting in concentration, following his breath, not stirring, not thinking, his body straight, his mindfulness on the immediate present, by the inconceivable power of concentration producing to the left, right, and above an inconceivable infinite body in each successive mental moment, manifesting an infinite variety of bodies. Sudana saw an inconceivable miraculous display of the liberation of enlightening beings coming forth from every pore of the ecstatic body of Saradvaja, who had attained such profound tranquility, silence, and objectlessness. With this miraculous display of the medium of liberation, Saradvaja filled the cosmos moment to moment with endless varieties of mystic projections, to perfect all beings, to honor all Buddhas, to purify all Buddha fields, to do away with the mass of suffering of all sentient beings, to cut off the courses of all bad conditions, to open the door to good conditions for all beings, to extinguish the burning of afflictions of all beings, to dissolve all beings' obstructions to knowledge, and to introduce all beings into omniscience. Sudana saw emanating from the soles of Saradvaja's feet masses of grandees as numerous as atoms in countless Buddhalands, their forms like those of the grandees in all worldly realms, wearing gorgeous clothing, variously adorned, wearing variously crested jewel crowns, surrounded by images of suns. He also saw priests and householders going throughout the 10 directions, caring for the poor with all kinds of food and drink, services, supplies, clothing, flowers, garlands, fragrances, ointments, acts of love, jewels, dwellings, vessels, and implements, restoring life to the miserable world, satisfying sentient beings, purifying sentient beings' minds, developing sentient beings for enlightenment. Sudana saw forms of warrior sages, priestly sages, worldly sages, scholars versed in various crafts, humanistic scholars, scholars expert in knowledge of the sciences of mundane and transmundane activities, sages considered teachers of the world, emanate from the circles on Saradvaja's knees and go throughout the 10 directions in many forms and guises, speaking pleasant words, cheering up dejected sentient beings, taking care of spiritually and materially poor beings, comforting beings in distress, uplifting the fallen, reviving the shipwrecked, rescuing the imperiled, causing the voice of goodness to be heard, preaching rejection of evil, exhorting beings to virtuous practices, directing beings to beneficial actions, producing joy, uttering kind words, and showing the world the nature of cooperation. Sudana saw various forms of wizards, as many as there are living beings, emanating from Saradvaja's navel and going throughout the 10 directions, wearing leather, rags, and bark, carrying staffs and pitchers, their deportment extremely calm, up on the sky extolling the qualities of Buddhas, causing the voice of the teaching to be heard, speaking the voice of Buddhas, showing the community of enlightening beings, praising religious conduct, directing sentient beings to guard their senses, describing the meaning of the voidness of intrinsic essence, introducing sentient beings into the meaning of knowledge, teaching worldly science, showing the science of the path to omniscience and emancipation, guiding beings in gradual practice. Sudana saw as many water spirit girls as all worldly events, in inconceivably many forms, emerging from Saradvaja's sides, pervading all universes moment to moment, showing the miracle of water spirits, adorning the sky with inconceivable fragrant clouds, adorning the whole sky with inconceivable clouds of flowers, arraying the whole realm of space with inconceivable adornments of clouds of garlands, covering all universes with inconceivable adornment of bejeweled parasols, adorning the sky with inconceivable clouds of jeweled banners, inconceivable clouds of jeweled pennants, rain from inconceivable endless clouds of great jewels, rain from inconceivable clouds of jewel necklaces and various flowers, inconceivable clouds of jewel seats with enlightening beings sitting on them, teaching the ways of enlightenment, inconceivable clouds of troves of celestial jewels, rain of clouds of sounds of goddesses singing praises of the teaching, inconceivable raining clouds of jewel lotuses adorned with nets of pearls crowned with diamonds, inconceivable clouds of jewel crowns and rain of clouds of endless lights adorned by all jewels, inconceivable clouds of celestial beings graced with flowers, garlands, parasols, and banners, inconceivable clouds of goddesses, adornments of rain produced by clouds of songs of praise of Buddha's qualities sung by the goddesses on high, standing with joined palms and scattering golden flowers, also covering all Buddha's assemblies with clouds of heaps of fragrances, the colors of all jewels and clouds of smoke of the finest incense, adorning all worlds, delighting all beings, honoring all Buddhas. Sudana saw as many Titan kings as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerging from the auspicious mark on Saradvaja's chest and pervading the cosmos moment to moment, displaying the inconceivable magic transformations of Titans, agitating the oceans, causing hundreds of thousands of worlds to quake, causing all the highest mountains to crash together, shaking up all celestial abodes, eclipsing all hordes of demons, crushing all armies of demons, causing all people to destroy intoxication, conceit, and arrogance, restraining and purifying corrupt minds, restraining malicious minds, extinguishing beings' bad qualities, shattering the mountains of afflictions, quieting grasping for pleasure, frightening sentient beings by exercises of titanic magical powers and scaring them away from evil, making them wary of the mundane world, getting them to leave all states of conditioned existence and enter into non-dwelling, leading sentient beings to the thought of enlightenment, getting them to purify the conduct of enlightening beings, establishing enlightening beings in the transcendent way, causing them to enter the stages of enlightening beings, causing them to produce enlightening beings' light of the way to Buddhahood, defining various principles and methods. Sudana saw as many bodies of Buddhist disciples and individual illuminates as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerge from Saradvaja's spine and pervade the cosmos, telling sentient beings attached to self and suited to guidance by disciples or individual illuminates about selflessness and the voidness of the being, clarifying the impermanence of all conditioned states to those attached to eternity, telling the lustful about the contemplation of impurity, telling the hostile about love, telling the deluded about causality and interdependent origination, illumining principles connected with the sphere of knowledge to those who are equally lustful, hostile, and deluded, telling those attached to objects about non-dwelling, causing those inclined to stick to tranquility to like the superiority of undertaking vows, showing actions beneficial to beings, in all places, in the beginning of all turnings of the ocean of ways to truth. Sudana saw as many demigods and supernatural beings as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerging from Saradvaja's shoulders and pervading the cosmos, with various physical forms, colors, and sizes, in various attitudes, riding various vehicles, surrounded by various retinues, striving to protect sentient beings, showing various powers, uttering various sounds, going everywhere employing various different means to guard the good actions of all sentient beings, to guard all circles of sages, to assist all enlightening beings, to protect those who are rightly oriented, to attend and honor all Buddhas with the work of thunderbolt bearers, to remove all fallen sentient beings from evil ways, striving to annihilate all worldly calamities and perils such as disease, anxious to preserve the light of actions beneficial to beings, filling the stores of knowledge and virtue, causing the wheel of the teaching to roll along, restraining controversy. Sudana saw as many centaur chiefs as atoms in countless Buddha fields surrounded by countless hundreds of thousands of centaur princesses, and as many celestial musician kings as atoms in countless Buddha fields surrounded by countless hundreds of thousands of celestial musician princesses emerge from Saradvaja's abdomen and pervade the cosmos, performing music and songs in praise of Buddha's dealing with the essence of things, illumining the thought of enlightenment, describing the conduct of enlightening beings, eulogizing all ways to attainment of enlightenment, fostering understanding of all ways of presenting the teaching, causing attraction to all ways of spiritual transformation, illumining all ways into ultimate release, publicizing all Buddha's teachings, gladdening all beings, purifying all Buddha fields, illuminating all ways to truth, removing all obstructions, begetting all roots of goodness. Sudana saw as many emperors as atoms in countless Buddha fields, each surrounded by 7 treasures and 4 armies, emerge from Saradvaja's face, pervading the cosmos, radiating arrays of light beams of great relinquishment, spewing forth masses of all kinds of jewels, distributing multitudes of all kinds of jewels, enriching the poor, causing people to desist from killing, fostering kindness in sentient beings, causing them to give up stealing, giving them countless beautifully adorned maidens, causing them to give up sexual misconduct, establishing them in chastity, causing them to desist from lying, enjoining on them supreme honesty, causing them to desist from slander, causing them to speak words of ultimate kindness and consideration, causing them to desist from harsh words and speak pleasantly, causing people to desist from all meaningless statements, statements connected with what is not beneficial and what is not right, urging them to certainty of distinction of statements of profound meaning, causing people to desist from all evils of speech and speak compassionately, removing mental defilements from people, enjoining the excellent state of having few desires and being content, causing people to desist from malice and urging them to be peaceful in their relations with others, extracting people from the web of all views, causing them to break up all kinds of uncertainties, throwing off all masses of doubts, taking away the darkness of all confusion and hesitation, definitively analyzing the truth for people, telling them about causality and interdependent origination, directing them to the principle of the truth about inherent existence, dispelling all obstacles, leading into the way of non-obstruction, illuminating the meaning of enlightenment. Sudana saw as many hundreds of thousands of suns as atoms in countless Buddha fields emanate from Saradvaja's eyes, lighting up all the great hells, dispersing the great darkness in the world, removing the darkness of sentient beings' delusions, relieving the beings in the frigid hells from the pains of cold, shining clear light in lands made of lotus fibers, shining lapis lazuli-colored light in gold lands, shining golden light in lands of lapis lazuli, shining golden light in silver worlds, shining crystal light in gold lands, shining golden light in crystal lands, shining coral light in gold lands, shining golden light in coral lands, shining golden light in ruby lands, shining ruby light in gold lands, shining golden light in emerald lands, shining emerald light in gold lands, shining light the color of sun-filled jewels in sapphire lands, shining sapphire light in lands made of sun-filled jewels, shining light the color of jewels containing networks of moonbeams in red pearl lands, shining light the color of red pearls in lands made of jewels containing networks of moonbeams, shining light the colors of various jewels in lands made of one jewel, shining light the color of one jewel in lands made of various jewels, thus involved in the infinite tasks of sentient beings, in the assemblies of all enlightening beings, pervading the universes of all beings. From the circle of hair between Saradvaja's eyebrows, Sudana saw as many moons as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerge, outshining all the celestial chiefs, turning all worldlings away from lust to enjoyment of the vision of Buddha, pervading the cosmos, engaged in the guidance of infinite beings. From Saradvaja's forehead, Sudana saw as many great Brahmas as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerge, their deportment extremely tranquil, murmuring prayers, asking all Buddhas for instruction, praising all Buddhas, gladdening all enlightening beings, pervading all universes in the 10 directions, involved in the infinite tasks of sentient beings. From Saradvaja's head, Sudana saw emerge as many enlightening beings as atoms in countless Buddha fields, manifesting bodies of various appearances, forms, adornments, and embellishments, emanating infinite spheres of light, taking up the past enlightening practices of all Buddhas and projecting from every pore multitudes of forms practicing charity without attachment to giver, receiver, or gift, showing oceans of past efforts involved in the various ways of transcendence, commending the act of giving to the world, getting rid of the filth of envy, directing beings to give up all grasping, causing the world to appear adorned with all kinds of jewels, establishing sentient beings in the practice of transcendent giving and in command over material things, praising all virtues, and teaching the cause of the characteristics of Buddhas. He also saw as many enlightening beings as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerge praising transcendent morality, manifesting from every pore oceans of past efforts of all Buddhas involved in transcendent morality, turning all beings away from the spheres of all mundane states and turning them toward the sphere of the enlightened, disdaining the world of desire, dispersing the veil of error from the world, stopping untrue thoughts and enjoining the way of life of enlightening beings, commending the ethic of great compassion and leading beings into the conduct of the practice of the path of Buddhas to attain the conduct of the enlightened, showing sentient beings that the state of existence is like a dream and guiding them into power over afflictions caused by grasping sense objects so that they may fully enter into the way of acting as in a dream. He also saw as many enlightening beings as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerge, lighting up the world with golden light, guiding beings to a state of mind without hatred or malice, free from all corruption and defect, emanating from every pore multitudes of past efforts of Buddhas involved in transcendent tolerance in order to cut off all brutal tendencies, leading sentient beings into the power of tolerance, showing sentient beings mastery over phenomena. He also saw as many enlightening beings as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerge, engaged in miraculous displays showing the endless power of energy of enlightening beings, commending tireless quest for the ocean of learning by the power of non-regression and progress toward omniscience, guiding beings to honor and attend all Buddhas, leading beings to arouse great energy to get rid of the mass of all suffering, emanating from all their bodies multitudes of past efforts involved in enlightening beings' perfection of transcendent energy, shattering sentient beings' mountains of sloth, leading sentient beings into transcendent energy, guiding sentient beings to mastery over action. He also saw as many enlightening beings as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerge, guiding sentient beings into the path of mindfulness, dissolving the darkness of all obstructions, causing sentient beings to desist from all intoxication and leading them into sobriety, taking down the flags of pretentiousness, arrogance, and pride, telling of the ocean of branches of meditation of Buddhas, describing transcendent meditation to people, emanating from every pore multitudes of past efforts involved in perfection of transcendent meditation, guiding sentient beings to mastery of mind, pervading the cosmos moment to moment. He also saw as many enlightening beings as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerge and pervade the cosmos in every moment of thought, emanating from every pore multitudes of past efforts involved in the search of Buddhahood, uttering multitudes of perfections of transcendent wisdom by oceans of words, emanating the lightning of right insight, expressing the inherent nature of phenomena, shattering the mountainous masses of sentient beings' notion of self, extracting all arrows of views, dispersing the darkness of desire, heedlessness, and doubt, commending control of inclination. He also saw as many enlightening beings as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerge and pervade the cosmos in a mental impulse, showing the sphere of methods of all Buddha's skill and liberative means, emanating from every pore multitudes of past efforts involved in skill and means, spreading the practice of skill and means in the world, illuminating the way of universal emancipation, describing the sphere of all Buddhas, describing and showing the practice of enlightening beings which unites the mundane and the transcendental, guiding sentient beings to enlightening beings' perfection of skill and means, demonstrating in the world all enlightening beings' mastery of regeneration. He also saw as many enlightening beings as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerge and pervade the cosmos in each moment of thought by projections of will, emanating from every pore multitudes of oceans of names of all Buddhas, radiating from every pore multitudes of past efforts involved in purification of transcendent vows of all enlightening beings, commending transcendent commitment, guiding sentient beings into the masteries of all enlightening beings, powering through the world the eternally rolling chariot wheel of great vows which follows all truths and gets rid of all afflictions and shatters the mountains of nescience. He also saw as many enlightening beings as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerge and ceaselessly fill the cosmos in each moment of thought, manifesting the power of enlightening beings' consummation of power, emanating from every pore multitudes of past efforts producing the consummation of transcendental power, showing power which cannot be overcome by any demons or challengers, nurturing such power that all the adamantine mountains surrounding the earth would shatter upon contact with their bodies, showing power such that their bodies do not even blaze up in the ocean of fire that burns the universe at the end of each eon, showing the power to hold all worlds in their hands while hovering in space, guiding beings to control of magical powers. He also saw as many enlightening beings as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerge and fill the cosmos, in every thought illuminating the sphere of knowledge of sentient beings, emanating from every pore multitudes of past efforts involved in purification of consummate knowledge, manifesting in the world the stage of knowledge characterized by mystic knowledge of all Buddha's virtues and knowledges, showing the stage of knowledge characterized by mystic knowledge of all Buddha's perceptions, illuminating the stage of knowledge characterized by mystic knowledge of the undertaking of all vows, revealing the stage of knowledge characterized by mystic knowledge of the undertaking of the vow to save all sentient beings, revealing the stage of knowledge characterized by mystic knowledge penetrating the lack of self or independent existence in all beings, illuminating the stage of knowledge characterized by mystic knowledge observing the ocean of minds of all sentient beings, analyzing the stage of knowledge characterized by mystic knowledge discerning the faculties of all sentient beings, describing the stage of knowledge characterized by mystic knowledge observing the inclinations and interests of all sentient beings, disclosing the stage of knowledge characterized by mystic knowledge comprehending the ocean of actions of all beings, showing the stage of knowledge characterized by mystic knowledge penetrating the ocean of commitments of all sentient beings, guiding sentient beings into the perfection of knowledge. From Saradvaja's top knot of flesh, Sudana saw emerge as many embodiments of Buddhas as atoms in countless Buddha fields, adorned with the finest characteristics and embellishments, appearing like mountains of gold, with immeasurable auras of blazing light, illumining everything in the 10 directions, and voices pervading the cosmos, suffusing all universes, showing endless miraculous transformations of Buddha, showering rain from clouds of teaching on all without discrimination, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called knowledge confronting the distinction of all planes of the cosmos on enlightening beings on the verge of enlightenment, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called the ground of universality on coronated enlightening beings, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called entry into the ground of universality on enlightening beings ordained as princes of the great teaching, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called universal arrangement on enlightening beings of youthful nature, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called steadfast head of great compassion on non-regressing enlightening beings, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called diamond of knowledge distinguishing the intrinsic essence of all phenomena on enlightening beings of purified intent, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called arrangement taking in all beings on enlightening beings accomplished in preparatory practices, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called cloud of communication with the assemblies of all Buddhas of past, present, and future on regenerated enlightening beings, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called voice of the ground of intrinsic essence of all phenomena on enlightening beings engaged in concerted practice, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called source of clouds containing the ways and means of great compassion on enlightening beings engaged in primary practices, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called store of kindness on enlightening beings newly determined to see enlightenment, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called inexhaustible treasury of kindness of the Buddha's commitment to liberation on enlightening beings of great zeal, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called inexhaustible treasury of the universal ground on beings in the world of form, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called sound produced by the measureless ocean of principles on Brahma body deities, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called inexhaustible treasury of power producing spiritual methods on controlling deities, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called sound cleaning variously represented provisions for omniscience on demon body deities, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called varied cargo of jewels of knowledge on the deities who enjoy emanations, showering rain from a cloud called varied representation of the vows of enlightening beings on deities in the heavens of happiness, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called treasury of recollection of all Buddhas on deities in the heavens of timely portion, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called source of the rapture of the vision of Buddha on the abodes of the chief deities, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called multitude of transformations of Buddha pervading the space of the cosmos on the abodes of the chief demigods, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called sound of eulogies of the qualities of all enlightened ones on the abodes of the chief celestial musicians, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called indestructible sphere of ways to knowledge on the abodes of the chief titans, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called multitude of means of development of all enlightened ones on the abodes of the chief birds, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called source of the magical utterances of enlightening beings traveling swiftly through the states of existence on the abodes of the chief dragons, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called speed of increase of the ocean of joy on the abodes of the chief serpents, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called sphere of the highest knowledge of all beings on the realms of humans, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called ornament bearing the words of the holy path, bespeaking the extinction of all the pains of mundane existence on the hells, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called round body of clouds of remembrance of Buddhas, bespeaking the practice of impeccable action on the realms of animals, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called declaration of the transcendence of all Buddhas, producing a mind of non-attachment in all sentient beings on the ghost realms, showering rain from a cloud of teaching called comforting sound, affecting the cessation of all pains on beings in distress. He also saw as many orbs of webs of light beams as atoms in countless Buddha fields emerge from every pore, countless whirling arrays of phantom forms of power, manifestations of countless various works, pervading the entire cosmos. From some orbs of webs of light beams, he saw scenes of the practice of pure giving, relinquishing everything. From some orbs of webs of light beams he saw scenes of the procedures of all past, present, and future enlightening beings' investiture with ethical precepts. From some orbs of webs of light beams he saw scenes of all enlightening beings of past, present, and future practicing forbearance, enduring dismemberment, beatings, having their hearts and eyes gouged out, and he saw magically produced images of the practices of forbearance of all enlightening beings by the oppressed enlightening beings of past, present, and future, with bodies sundered in the search of omniscience, enduring, forgiving, and overlooking all physical and mental harassment out of great compassion. From some orbs of webs of light beams he saw scenes of different forms of the immensity of the practice of vigor of all enlightening beings, scenes of the great prowess of enlightening beings shaking the world, agitating the seas, startling sentient beings, scaring all heretics. From some orbs of webs of light beams he saw embodiments of all deeds of enlightening beings, the forms taken on, the perfections of physical bodies to be born in good families, the acceptance of instructions of spiritual benefactors, the states of practice of the teachings of spiritual benefactors, the abandonments of home, country, and city for suitable abodes to accomplish the branches of meditation of the enlightened, the seers, the meditation adepts, the kings, the recluses, the manners of disciplined conduct. From some orbs of webs of light beams he saw embodiments involved in seeking all truths in the station of practice of transcendent wisdom. From the orbs of webs of light beams from each and every pore, Sudna saw the bodies by which each statement of the teaching was sought from the midst of all beings by relinquishing all that exists, sought from all spiritual benefactors through attendance and service, sought from Buddhas with all the strength generated by faith and respect, and all the statements of the teaching related to transcendent wisdom similarly sought by bodies manifested in the forms of all sentient beings. From some orbs of webs of light beams he saw all enlightening beings entering the ocean of states of being with means of development, endeavoring to save all sentient beings. From orbs of webs of light beams from every pore he saw enlightening beings saving sentient beings, engaged in the practice of skill and means taken on by their original bodies, approaching each and every being in a form resembling those beings. From some orbs of webs of light beams he saw the conduct of the Buddha's undertaking of vows in all past ages, the conduct of the undertaking of the vow to perfect all beings, the conduct of the undertaking of the vow to purify all lands, the spheres of accomplishment of all vows affected by each Buddha by the specific cures for each of the ills of the mundane world. Sudana saw all this from orbs of lights from each pore. From some orbs of webs of light beams he saw oceans of past efforts involved in the practice of transcendent power. From some orbs of webs of light beams he saw oceans of past efforts involved in the contemplations of the practice of omniscience and the awakening of sentient beings asleep in the slumber of ignorance. Then, observing the monk Saradvaja thus concentrated in meditation, mindful of that sphere of concentration and liberation, contemplating the inconceivable power of concentration of enlightening beings, entering into that inconceivable ocean of ways of benefiting sentient beings, remembering that inconceivable medium of the performance of supernal manifestations confronting all the senses, strongly focusing his attention on it, entering that door of knowledge of purity of arrangement of the cosmos, aspiring to that enlightened power, expanding in knowledge, recognizing that controlling power of enlightening beings, stabilizing the power of vows of enlightening beings, extending the power of practice of enlightening beings. Sudana stood before Saradvaja for a day and a night, for 2 days and nights, 7 days and nights, a fortnight, a month, 6 months, and then 6 more days and nights. After 6 months and 6 days and nights, the monk Saradvaja rose from concentration. Sudana said, "It is marvelous, noble one, how profound this concentration is, how vast, how measureless its scope, how inconceivable its arrays of projections, how incomparable its light, how innumerable its manifestations, how unsurpassable its range, how pure its sphere, how it illumines everywhere equally, how it works for the benefit of infinite beings, in that it is directed to the extinction of the measureless mass of suffering of all sentient beings, to extinguish the sufferings of the destitute, to end hellish states, to rescue beings from brutish states, to close the door to all conditions inopportune for enlightenment, to lead the way to heavenly states, to produce human and celestial pleasure and happiness, to foster experience of the pleasure of meditation, to increase happiness in the conditioned world, to show the way out of the mundane. It is set forth to illumine the cause of production of the aspiration of enlightenment, to develop the cause of production of provisions of virtue and knowledge, to increase the intensity of vast great compassion, to generate the power of great vows for the attainment of the light of the path of enlightening beings, for the arrangement of the great vehicle of the transcendent ways, for the accomplishment of the supreme attainment of the great vehicle, for the vision of the knowledge of universally good action, for the attainment of the light of the knowledge of the stages of enlightening beings, for the accomplishment of the purification of the array of means of emancipation and the practice of the vows of all enlightening beings, for the empowerment of accession to the sphere of omniscience. Noble one, what is the name of this concentration? Saradvaja said, "There is a perfection of wisdom called equanimity of the universal eye, and this concentration is its light, called manifestation of universal purification. By the perfect accomplishment of the concentration of manifestation of universal purification, which springs from the light of the perfection of wisdom of equanimity of the universal eye, countless tens of hundreds of thousands of complete concentrations beginning with the manifestation of universal purification, are born. Sudana said, "Is this the greatest range of this concentration?" Saradvaja said, "One who has fully accomplished this concentration has the power to discern worlds, to enter worlds, to travel freely in worlds, to adorn worlds, to purify worlds, to beautify worlds, to see Buddhas, to observe the grandeur of Buddhas, to know the emanations of Buddhas, to enter the powers of Buddhas, to plunge into the ocean of virtues of Buddhas, to receive the teachings of Buddhas, to follow the knowledge of the unity of all Buddha's teachings, to enter the ocean of congregations of Buddhas, to go anywhere in the 10 directions, to observe the teaching activity of the Buddhas, to see the realms of the Buddhas, to embrace all with great compassion, to pervade everywhere with love, to plunge tirelessly into the vision of Buddhas everywhere, to enter into the ocean of all beings, to know the ocean of faculties of all beings, to know the distinction of faculties of all beings. I know this state of perfection of wisdom, but how can I know the practice, tell of the virtues, show the realm, reveal the sphere, describe the power of great vows, illumine the way of emancipation, elucidate the attainment, shed light on the path, follow the stream of concentration, know the range of mind, or reach equality with the knowledge of the enlightening beings who have entered the ocean of states of perfection of wisdom, who have clarified the cosmic perspective, who know where all teachings lead, who pervade an infinite sphere with vast awareness, who command the light of great mental control, who have purified the light of all spheres of concentration, who issue from the magical power of mystic knowledge, who have entered the inexhaustible ocean of intelligence, who speak pleasantly of the stages of enlightenment, who are refuges for all beings. Go south to a place called Samudra Vitadan, where there is a park called Samantavyuha, in front of the city Mahaprabha, where a laywoman named Asha, wife of King Suprabha, dwells. Go to her and ask her how an enlightening being is to learn and apply the practice of enlightening beings. Then Sudana, pleased, uplifted, transported, overjoyed, joyful, and happy, invigorated and sustained by Saradvaja, having entered the realm of concentration, having attained illumined knowledge, having attained the light of concentration, his consciousness illumined by the light of the principles of teaching pursuant to purifications of interest, seeing the way to purity, with knowledge emanating light in all directions, paid his respects to Saradvaja and left, looking at him again and again, bowing to him, thinking and meditating on him, praising him, recalling his virtues and keeping them firmly in mind, joining in with his vow, seeking his vision, remembering his words, recalling his appearance, contemplating the excellence of his knowledge, plunging into his sphere of concentration, fixing his mind on his sphere of undertaking, reflecting on the scope of his experience, illumined by his knowledge.